massive breaking news this morning that we have learned through sources that Suffolk County Police have arrested a suspect in connection with the Gilgo Beach killings.
The Long Island serial killer? Has he been caught?
Stop it, please. Please stop it. Please stop it. No. Something's gonna happen to me.
In the dark archives of criminal history, the Long Island serial killer stands as a haunting figure, leaving a trail of fear and tragedy in his wake. This video delves into the chilling case, shedding light on the lives of the victims who fell prey to this heinous predator. We will also talk about the profile of a murderer who could do such things, and we will discuss about other possible murders that may be related to the same killer. Up to 18 people's bones were discovered in Gilgo Beach on the south shore of Long Island following a series of murders that occurred between 1996 and 2011. The majority of the victims were sex workers who placed Craigslist ads. The culprit in this crime has alternatively been referred to as the Manorville Butcher, the Craigslist Ripper, and the Long Island serial killer. Following Shanann Gilbert's disappearance, which prompted the police investigation of the region along the Ocean Parkway close to the secluded coastal villages of Gilgo and Oak Coastal in Suffolk County, the victims' bodies were discovered over the course of several months in 2010 and 2011. Near Gilgo Beach in December 2010, the remains of 4 victims, known as the Gilgo Four, were discovered not far apart. In Suffolk and Nassau counties, 6 further sets of remains were discovered in the months of March and April 2011. The last 2 sets of remains, according to police, predate the discovery of the 4 bodies in December 2010. A year after the bodies of the Gilgo Four were recovered, Gilbert's remains were also uncovered. Her demise is still under investigation. Police say she drowned accidentally, but a second autopsy suggested she may have been strangled. On December 11, 2010, the first set of human remains were found by the side of Ocean Parkway in Oak Beach. The investigation was brought on by the search for Shanann Gilbert. The 24-year-old had vanished in the region in May of that same year after fleeing from a client's house and calling 911 for a total of 23 minutes to report that "they are trying to kill me." Officer John Malia was tasked by the Missing Person Division of the Suffolk County Police Department to look for Gilbert with his German Shepherd, Blue, who is a trained cadaver dog. Malia looked all across the gated beach neighborhood where Gilbert was last seen over the summer of 2010. On December 11, 2010, the officer tried again to conduct a search while remaining near to the parkway's shoulder. Based on FBI statistics showing that abandoned bodies are usually discovered close to roads, Malia chose his search location. His cadaver dog picked up a scent in spite of dense vegetation and the thin covering of snow, which the 2 of them followed to a skeleton in a deteriorating burlap bag. Later tests confirmed that the remains belonged to Melissa Bartholomew. While scouring the location for additional evidence, police found 3 more bodies. The bodies of Amber Costello, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Maureen Brainerd were discovered roughly 500 feet apart. Jessica Taylor's scattered remains were discovered along Ocean Parkway in March 2011. Other pieces of Taylor's remains had been discovered in Manorville, a Suffolk County town, 8 years prior in 2003. The following month, in April 2011, authorities recovered 3 more sets of remains, those of an unnamed Asian man, a female toddler, and Valerie Mack, whose partial bones, like those of Jessica Taylor, had been found in Manorville in November 2000. An unidentified woman whose partial bones had earlier been discovered on Fire Island in 1996, and an unidentified woman with a distinctive peach tattoo, who was later discovered to be the mother of the unidentified toddler, were also found in Suffolk County. Let's talk about the victims. Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Maureen, a 25-year-old from Norwich, Connecticut, stated that she intended to spend the day in New York City when she was last heard from on July 9, 2007. She vanished without a trace. Maureen, a mother of 2, used Craigslist to find paid escort jobs to help her pay her mortgage. After receiving an eviction notice, she returned to the sex industry after being away for 7 months in order to pay her debts. Her body was discovered in December 2010. Sarah Carnes, a friend of Brainerd Barnes, received a call from a man on an unknown number not long after she vanished. He said he had just visited Brainerd Barnes and that she was still alive and residing at a warehouse in Queens. He was unable to provide Carnes with the address of the house since he would not identify himself. He promised to call Carnes again and give her the address, but he never did. The individual, according to Carnes, lacked a recognizable Boston or New York accent. Maureen was working at a Super 8 motel in Manhattan when she vanished. She planned to meet a customer outside the motel on the evening of July 9, 2007, and she informed a friend in Connecticut of her plans over the phone. Maureen, who was just 4 feet 11 tall and weighed 105 pounds, was a small-framed woman like many others. She'd been choked to death. Melissa Barthelemy. On July 12, 2009, Melissa, 24 years old, of Erie County, New York, vanished. She was a Craigslist escort who was living in the Bronx of New York City. She met with a customer the night before she vanished, put $900 in her bank account, and tried to phone an ex-boyfriend but couldn't get through. 5 weeks after Melissa Barthelемy's death, her adolescent sister Amanda started receiving a string of vulgar, mocking, and insulting calls from a man using Melissa's cell phone, who may have been the murderer. Amanda was asked if she was a whore like her sister. The calls got more and more sinister until the caller finally informed Amanda that her sister had passed away and that he was going to watch her rot. The calls were tracked by the police to Madison Square Garden, Midtown Manhattan, and Massapequa, but they were unable to identify the caller. Barthelemy's mother reported that her daughter's phone made a lot of calls to Manorville right before she vanished. Melissa was 95 pounds and 4 feet 10. She'd been choked to death. Megan Waterman. Megan, 22 years old, of South Portland, Maine, who had advertised as an escort on Craigslist, vanished on June 6, 2010. She had informed her 20-year-old boyfriend the day before that she was going out and would call him later. She was staying at a motel 15 miles northeast of Gilgo Beach at the time of her abduction. December 2010 saw the discovery of her body. Waterman, who was a single mother, had fallen victim to sex trafficking. She was 5 feet tall. She'd been choked to death. Amber Lynn Costello. On September 2, 2010, Costello, a sex worker and heroin user from West Babylon, New York, a small village 10 miles north of Gilgo Beach, went missing. She apparently went to see a stranger that evening after receiving multiple calls from him offering to pay her $1,500 for her services. Costello was a Wilmington, North Carolina native who had grown up in Charlotte. When she stopped responding to messages and phone calls, her family assumed that she was at a residential drug recovery facility, thus she was not immediately reported missing. Costello had been residing in Clearwater, Florida with her second husband and working as a waitress before relocating to West Babylon. Despite being a brilliant student, Costello developed a heroin addiction as a kid. When she was just 6 years old, a neighbor had essayed her. Costello was roughly 100 pounds and 4 feet 11. She'd been choked to death as well. The remains, found in varying states of decomposition, provided further evidence of a relentless serial killer operating within the area. The Long Island serial killer case is marked by several unidentified victims, known as Jane Does, who have yet to be officially named. These individuals, who were found along Ocean Parkway, represent the silent victims whose identities and stories remain a mystery. The search for their names is ongoing as investigators and forensic experts work tirelessly to bring them the justice they deserve. The investigation into the Long Island serial killer case extended beyond the borders of Long Island, revealing chilling connections to Atlantic City and New Jersey. The remains of victims like Kim Raffo, Tracy Ann Roberts, and Barbara Brader were discovered in the area, raising questions about a potential network of victims and the wider geographical scope of the killer's activities. The list of potential victims and missing persons associated with the case continues to grow. This investigation has spanned years, with law enforcement tirelessly piecing together a complex puzzle. The numerous bodies discovered painted a stark picture of a ruthless killer who operated with a chilling degree of calculation and secrecy. The Long Island serial killer left behind a trail of digital breadcrumbs that have proved invaluable to investigators. Online forums and classified ad platforms became the hunting ground for the killer, who preyed on vulnerable individuals. Through meticulous digital forensics, law enforcement has been able to trace the killer's online activity, uncovering vital information and potential leads. One of the key pieces of evidence that has emerged in this case is the pattern of the victim's disappearances. Many of the victims were involved in sex work and had a history of transient lifestyles. The killer targeted individuals who were marginalized and often went unnoticed by society, exploiting their vulnerabilities and using their circumstances to his advantage. Cell phone records and location data have proven to be invaluable sources of evidence in the Long Island serial killer investigation. By analyzing the communications and movements of the victims, as well as potential suspects, investigators have been able to establish connections and identify potential areas of interest. This digital evidence has played a crucial role in narrowing down the list of suspects and uncovering potential leads. Forensic DNA analysis has been an essential tool in the pursuit of the Long Island serial killer. By analyzing DNA samples found at the crime scenes, investigators have been able to link multiple victims to a single perpetrator. DNA evidence not only establishes the presence of the killer, but also allows for comparisons to be made with known offenders in databases, potentially leading to a breakthrough in the case. This evidence-driven approach has shed light on the motivations, patterns, and characteristics of the killer, aiding investigators in their quest for justice. After thorough analysis, the profilers came up with the following portrait of the murderer. The Long Island serial killer exhibits a methodical and calculated approach to his crimes. The choice of victims, the disposal of bodies in remote locations, and the avoidance of detection suggest a meticulous and strategic mindset. This predator displays an ability to maintain control over the situation, carefully selecting vulnerable victims and evading law enforcement's grasp. He preys on individuals who are often marginalized and vulnerable, particularly sex workers. The choice of victims provides the perpetrator with a perceived sense of power and control. This selection may also stem from the belief that these individuals are less likely to be reported missing, increasing the killer's chances of remaining undetected. Signature aspects and the killer's modus operandi can provide crucial insights into their psyche. The Long Island serial killer demonstrates a tendency to target victims involved in the sex industry, primarily through online platforms. The disposal of the victims' bodies in remote areas, often concealed and buried, signifies a desire to remain hidden and minimize the chances of discovery. The Long Island serial killer's prolonged activity raises questions about their ability to adapt and evolve. The extended timeline of the crimes suggests an individual who is adept at avoiding detection and learning from past mistakes. It is likely that the killer has refined their techniques over time, making it challenging for law enforcement to establish a definitive pattern. Understanding the motives of the Long Island serial killer can shed light on their psychological makeup. The motivations may range from a desire for power and control to a deep-seated resentment or anger towards sex workers. The gratification derived from the act of taking lives and the subsequent power dynamics involved may serve as a driving force to the perpetrator. The Long Island serial killer displays characteristics of adaptability and the ability to blend into society. This chameleon-like quality allows the killer to navigate different environments, maintain a semblance of normalcy, and avoid arousing suspicion. The killer may lead a seemingly ordinary life, concealing their dark deeds from friends, family, and acquaintances. The meticulous nature of the crimes, the selection of victims, and the killer's ability to remain undetected demonstrate a high level of cunning and control. Understanding the profile of the Long Island serial killer is crucial in narrowing down potential suspects and developing effective investigative strategies. Over the course of the investigation, law enforcement has identified and scrutinized several suspects, each contributing to the complex puzzle surrounding these heinous crimes. Joseph Brewer emerged as an early suspect in the case. His connection to one of the victims and the circumstances surrounding their last interaction raised suspicions. However, after intense scrutiny and thorough investigation, Brewer was cleared of direct involvement in the murders, highlighting the challenges faced in distinguishing between innocent connections and true culpability. John Bitrolf became a person of interest in the Long Island serial murders investigation due to DNA evidence linking him to the crime scenes. As investigators delved into his background, they discovered a troubled personal life and disturbing past behavior. While Bitrolf was ultimately convicted for unrelated murders, the extent of his involvement in the Long Island serial murders remains the subject of ongoing scrutiny. James Burke, a former police chief, entered the spotlight as a suspect due to his position of authority and access to inside information. The investigation unveiled a web of corruption surrounding Burke, raising questions about his potential involvement in the Long Island serial murders. However, direct evidence linking him to the crimes has yet to be established, leaving his role in this dark chapter unresolved. Dr. Peter Hackett, an Oak Beach resident, captured attention due to his alleged involvement with some of the victims. As a physician in the community, his knowledge of the area and potential access to drugs created suspicion. Although Hackett denied any involvement and was never charged, his connection to the victims remains a subject of intrigue and speculation. John B. Brewer, a relative of Joseph Brewer, also came under scrutiny during the investigation. With links to the Gilgo Beach area and a history of disturbing behavior, he attracted attention as a potential suspect. However, due to limited evidence tying him directly to the murders, his role remains a matter of speculation. Amid the named suspects, the Long Island serial murders case has been plagued by a multitude of unidentified suspects. The remains of numerous victims found along Ocean Parkway raise questions about the number of perpetrators involved. The complexities of a case spanning several years, victims from different backgrounds, and potential serial killings occurring simultaneously complicated efforts to identify and apprehend the perpetrator. The formation of the Special Task Force was a pivotal moment in the investigation. Law enforcement agencies from multiple jurisdictions pooled their resources, expertise, and manpower. The task force was specifically designed to centralize efforts, streamline communication, and maximize the chances of solving the case. The task force consisted of a diverse array of professionals, each contributing their specialized skills to the investigation. Homicide detectives, forensic experts, behavioral analysts, digital forensic specialists, and community liaisons were among the key members involved. The multidisciplinary nature of the task force allowed for comprehensive analysis of evidence, in-depth profiling, and enhanced community engagement. Central to the success of the Special Task Force was the emphasis on collaboration and information sharing among various agencies. Regular meetings, joint operations, and real-time communication platforms facilitated a cohesive investigative approach. The exchange of knowledge, experience, and resources proved vital in tackling the complex nature of the Long Island serial killer case. The task force leveraged cutting-edge forensic techniques to analyze evidence, including DNA analysis, digital forensics, and geolocation data. By harnessing technological advancements, the team unearthed valuable leads, connected patterns, and reconstructed timelines to create a comprehensive understanding of the crimes. These techniques helped bridge gaps in the investigation and offered crucial insights into the identity of the killer. Recognizing the significance of community engagement, the task force actively reached out to the public for information and support. Community meetings, public appeals, and victim advocacy initiatives were established to build trust, gather tips, and provide support to the families affected by the Long Island serial killer. By fostering a collaborative relationship with the community, the task force cultivated a sense of collective responsibility in bringing the perpetrator to justice. They also encountered numerous challenges during the investigation. The vast geographical area, the transient nature of the victims, and the elusive nature of the killer posed significant obstacles. On July 14, 2023, a suspect, Rex Heuermann, was accused of killing Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder. According to a bail application, he is also implicated in Maureen Brainard Barnes' murder and disappearance.
And we have some breaking news I want to tell you about right now from New York. The Long Island serial killer, has he been caught? New York police have now arrested someone in connection with the unsolved murders on Long Island's Gilgo Beach from more than a decade ago. Chief investigative reporter Sam Smink is at the breaking news desk with all the details, including a Connecticut connection. Sam?
Kara, according to CBS New York, Rex Heuerman is in custody, accused of being the Long Island killer. According to their sources, Heuerman identifies himself as an architect and is a suspect in the death of at least 11 people, most of whom were young women who had been sex workers. One of the alleged victims is Maureen Brainerd Barnes, who was abducted in 2007. She's from Norwich. Brainerd Barnes was believed to have been taken from an Amtrak train traveling from New London to Grand Central Terminal in 2007, according to investigators. Her body was found near Gilgo Beach in 2010 during the search for another victim. 4 bodies were found that same day. Brainerd Barnes is believed to be the first victim in what is known as the Gilgo Four. Eventually, 6 more bodies were found through 2010 and 2011.
Rex Heuermann was born and raised on Long Island, a place that would ultimately shape his architectural vision. From a young age, he displayed a deep fascination with structures and aesthetics. He pursued his passion by studying architecture at a prestigious university. Notable projects of his include the Greenview Residence, the Solaris Tower, and the award-winning Huntington Cultural Center. A married man and the father of 2, he now faces charges for the notorious Long Island murders. A pizza box that had been placed into a Manhattan garbage can served as the link between him and the crime site. According to court filings, Rex Heuermann was being followed by investigators at his Manhattan architectural office as he threw the pizza box into the trash. The crew took a piece of leftover pizza crust and had a forensic lab swab it and examine it. According to the prosecution, the analyzed sample matched a mitochondrial DNA profile from a male hair taken from some burlap found on Megan Waterman's body. The Manhattan architect has entered a not guilty plea to 6 murder charges related to the infamous Gilgo Beach serial killings. He showed up in court while being restrained and dressed in a polo shirt and khaki pants. He was held without bail. More than 300 subpoenas, search warrants, and other legal processes to obtain evidence were used in the extensive probe of Heuermann, according to court documents made public on Friday. Police claim to have discovered a number of incriminating things, including cell phone billing records for Heuermann that matched the locations of temporary or burner devices that he reportedly used to set up meetings with 3 of the murder victims. The locations of the cell phones and the billing data matched taunting calls made to a relative of Barthélemy, as well as different calls a detective made to Barthélemy's cell phone while investigating her disappearance. Similar to this, billing information and mobile tower positions are said to have connected Heuermann to calls made after Brainerd Barnes vanished to check her voicemail. Heuermann's phones had links to either Massapequa Park or Midtown Manhattan, where he lived and worked, as did the victims and Heuermann. The court records include numerous maps of Heuermann's suspected burner cell phone's activity, as well as the nearby cellular tower data. In addition to the burner cell phones, investigators said Heuermann had a number of online accounts that were used for illicit activities and were held under fictitious names. Heuermann's middle name is Andrew, therefore Andy, and Andrew Roberts and John Springfield were a few of those names. Authorities claimed that he made thousands of searches relating to sex workers, sadistic torture-related pornography, and photos showing child essay on one burner email account he set up. He allegedly carried out 200 searches on active and well-known serial killers on the same account between March of the last year and June of this year. Additionally, details about the murders and disappearances of Brainerd Barnes, Barthélemy, Waterman, and Costello, as well as the police investigations into those crimes, were sought in the searches. Searches during that period that police noted included: why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? Why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? Long Island killer. Long Island serial killer phone call. Images of the victims and their relatives. Counter surveillance. If he is guilty, and it does sure look like he is, he tried to find out as much as possible about how the investigation was going. This makes me wonder, did he maybe change the location in which he disposed of the bodies? I find it really hard to believe that after all of those murders, he simply stopped. I think he continued to murder women, he just found another place to hide the victims. New York abolished the death penalty back in 2004, so if Rex Heuermann is found guilty, he will probably receive a sentence of life in prison without parole. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.